Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Coast to Coast Sports, and today we continue one of my very favorite things, my MLB player rankings for 2023. So reminder what this is me going through every single player in the 2023 season and giving them a ranking from 1 to 30 on every single team. Today we are doing backup catchers. I'm going to be going through every single player who was the second most innings at their team at the position of catcher and ranking them number 30 through number 1. So without further ado, let's get into it. We begin with number 30, Cam Gallagher of the Cleveland Guardians. Cam Gallagher, he was just simply not good this season. Cam Gallagher is not a good player. He really has never had a good season, not since 2020 when he hit 283. Last season, he hit 126. He had an on-base percentage of 154, and he had an OPS of 322. That's really, really, really bad. He ends up with 6 doubles, no home runs, 7 runs batted in. In 56 games, he only managed to get 18 hits in 143 at-bats. Defensively, he's fine, but Cam Gallagher is probably not a guy who's going to even get a job as a backup next year. I don't see any team giving him a chance to do that. So next up, number 2, we've got Jose Herrera of the Arizona Diamondbacks. So Jose Herrera, he's the guy who the Diamondbacks brought in to be the backup for Gabriel Moreno. And as Gabriel Moreno's backup, he didn't end up having to play that much, only 101 at-bats, so not a lot of playing time. In those 101 at-bats, he did not show very much. 208 was his batting average, no home runs, 13 runs batted in, 13 walks, 7 runs batted in, and he struck out 30 times in 101 at-bats, so that's not a very good strikeout rate. It's about like a 30% strikeout rate, so not very good there. Again, defense is fine, but Jose Herrera is probably not a guy going forward who's going to be getting a whole lot of opportunities to even probably be a backup, unfortunately for him. But, you know, he did get the chance to do that this season, and maybe the Diamondbacks bring him back again. Coming in at number 28, we have Tucker Barnhart of the Chicago Cubs. And what's interesting is that Tucker Barnhart was maybe going to be their starter. He's been a starter for the Cincinnati Reds for quite some time, and he was with Detroit last season. Comes into the Cubs 2023, and he only plays 47 games, 109 at-bats, and a big part of that was due to some injuries. But he was supposed to be more of a platoon with Yan Gomes, and instead he barely got to play at all. It also happens to do, though, when he did play, he just wasn't that good. He hit 202, that's the worst batting average of his entire career. A 285 on base percentage, also a career low. 257 slugging, also a career low. So he just did not have a good season, and it makes sense. He's been around for 10 seasons. He is getting older. He's going to be, I believe, 34 next year, so he's, you know, fairly old. His defense is fine, but his defense has not been as good as it was in years past. 1 home run, 3 doubles. He wasn't hitting for extra bases, 9 runs batted in. Just not a very productive season out of Tucker Barnhart. I do think the Cubs plan for him to be back next season, though, and maybe if he stays healthy, he'll be able to kind of have a bounce back year. Coming in at number 27, we have Garrett Stubs of the Philadelphia Phillies. Garrett Stubs, he's been around with the Phillies for quite some time. Also played for the Houston Astros before that. But Garrett Stubs, you know, for being a guy who's been in the league for 5 years, 30 years old, he really hasn't done very much in his career. He has a career batting average of 220. Last year, he hit 204. Career slugging 293, or career on base percentage of 293. Last year 274. So again, he was below all of his career marks. Just a 1 home run, 4 doubles, 1 triple. That's kind of rare to see a catcher with 1 triple. And he steals 2 bases, 12 runs batted in. He was a fine season for a backup. The good news is the Phillies, they don't really need their backup catcher to be very good because they have JT Realmuto, who's already one of the best catchers in the league. So, you know, Garrett Stubs didn't produce a whole lot. Again, not much playing time either. He did set a career high in at-bats, though, while setting a fairly low batting average to go along with it. So not great for Garrett Stubs. He is pretty good defensively, though, and that's why he's there. He's there just to give JT Realmuto a break. Coming in at number 26, Colorado Rockies backup catcher Austin Wynns. Austin Wynns, a guy he was actually played for 3 teams last season. He played for the Giants 1 game, 5 games for the Dodgers, then settled in Colorado where he played 45 of his games. So Austin Wynns got a chance he has been the backup before for the Orioles, gets a chance from the Rockies, and with that chance, he hits 214, 273 on base percentage, 555 OPS, 1 home run, 8 runs batted in. Yeah, just not a great season again. Austin Wynns did not do a whole lot. The good news, again, he didn't need to. The Rockies had Elias Diaz, who was an all-star catcher last season, so they didn't really need Austin Wynns to do a whole lot besides just be there to play twice a week and give Elias Diaz those days off. And Austin Wynns did a good job of doing that. He was there. He was reliable, didn't get injured. That's Austin Wynns. Number 25, New York Mets backup catcher Omar Narvaez. Now, Omar Narvaez was supposed to be their starter. He was their starter. He was the starter for the Brewers. He was the starter for the Mariners before that. So the Mets brought him in to be their starter, but he got injured early on in the season, and that's why, they called up Francisco Alvarez, and Alvarez ended up taking over as the starter. Alvarez outplayed him. Narvaez did end up coming back and backing up Francisco Alvarez for the rest of the season. Narvaez he's been good in the past. Last season just wasn't it. A 211 batting average, 283 on base, 297 slugging, good for a 580 OPS, so not very good of a slash line there. He hits 2 home runs, 5 doubles, 14 runs batted in, 12 runs scored in 50 games, 128 at-bats. So the lowest, that's the lowest amount of at-bats he's got in any year outside of 2020, which was obviously the COVID-shortened season. So again, not a whole lot of production out of him. He was also injured. He is coming back to the Mets. They just, I believe they extended him for one more season, so he's going to come back, and he's a nice guy to have behind the plate. He is really good defensively. He works well with the pitching staff, and he's going to be able to mentor Francisco Alvarez and help him kind of grow into his role as the Mets starting catcher. Next up, coming in at number 24, San Diego Padres backup catcher, we have Austin Nola. So what is Austin Nola? How was his season last year? It was pretty meh. He's a guy who they brought in to be their starter, and Austin Nola just wasn't a guy who they could rely upon last season. He ends up with just 130 at-bats, so that was a career low for him. Just the 1 home run, 8 runs batted in. A 146 batting average, a 260 on-base percentage, and a 192 slugging. He was their starter in 2022, and he was really good, but he ends up right now, he's a free agent, and he might not get a chance to go to any team. I'm not sure which team's going to give this guy a chance after hitting 146 in 52 games. And yeah, career low in at-bats, career low in total bases, career low in doubles, career low in home runs, career low in runs batted in. He was career low in batting average. It was a career low season just all across the board for Austin Nola, so just not a good year for him. Number 23, we have Jose Trevino of the New York Yankees. He was an all-star in 2022. 2023 just did not work out for him. He did get injured. That played a big role in it and ended up, losing that job to Kyle Higashioka. But Jose Trevino last season, a 210 batting average, 257 on base. He did hit 4 home runs and 4 doubles. That's good for a 312 slugging. But even still, the OPS 569, just not very good of a slash line. And you're noticing a common theme in these backup catchers is they're not going to hit very well. Those slash lines are not good. 15 runs batted in, he does produce a little bit from that end, 15 runs scored, plays 55 games, 157 at bats, but yeah, just not a good season out of Jose Trevino. And, the Yankees are going to hope that he can bounce back, because right now it's going to be either him or Austin Wells who will be their catcher next season. But he's going to be there. And at number 22, we have Austin Barnes of the Los Angeles Dodgers, career backup for them. He's been on the Dodgers for a long time. The dude's 33. He's been on the Dodgers since 2015, and he was their starter for 2 seasons, then ends up going back to being their backup role for the past 5 seasons. He's been their backup, and he's one of the most reliable backup catchers in the league until last year. His numbers plummeted. He had never hit below 200 before. Last year, he hit 180. He never had an on-base percentage below 290 before. Last year, his on-base percentage plummeted down to 256. His slugging percentage also career low, 242. His OPS had never been below 600. Last year, not only was it below 600, he was below 500. He had a 498 OPS. The reason why he does make it as high as 22 is because he did get quite a few at-bats, 178 at-bats, and he did produce a little bit there. 5 doubles, 2 home runs, 11 runs batted in, 15 runs scored, and he also was really solid defensively. That's what he's there for. Austin Barnes is a really good defensive catcher. He has been that for the majority of his career. He's a guy who is going to throw runners out really well, frame pitches really well, and you see the numbers come across. He has last season 994 fielding percentage, He's really good behind the plate defensively. He works with the pitching staff really well, but he's not there to provide offense, because if they want him to be an offense, I mean, they already have Will Smith to be the offensive catcher. So Austin Barnes, solid backup, number 22 last season. Number 21, we got Francisco Mahia of the Tampa Bay Rays, 28 years old, and last season was his third year as the Rays backup catcher, and he ends up with only 50 games, 150 at-bats. There's quite a bit less than he's gotten in years past. Hits 227, 258 on base, and a 400 slugging. 400 slugging, how did he get that? Because he did hit for some extra bases. 5 homers, 11 doubles, 19 runs batted in, and he scores 22 runs. So Francisco Mahia actually was fairly productive as a backup catcher last season. The Rays do not have him on the roster currently. I believe he's a free agent, so it'll be interesting to see if he goes somewhere. I'm guessing he'll get a job, an opportunity to be a backup for some other team. Okay, so we get into the top 20, and we go with the Washington Nationals backup catcher Riley Adams, 27 years old, and up until last season, I had never heard of Riley Adams. He's been their backup for 2 years now. And he ends up having a solid year. 13 doubles, 4 home runs, 21 runs batted in. He hits 273 with a 331 on base, 476 slugging for an OPS of 807. The reason he is as low as 20 is because he didn't do it for that long of a sample size. He did have an 807 OPS, but only 143 at-bats. So, you take it with a grain of salt, because he didn't play a whole lot, only 44 games. He's actually was a pretty solid guy, though, for them to have, and, a guy who... He has about the same amount of experience as Keibert Ruiz. He's a little bit older, but I think he pairs up really well with Keibert Ruiz as their backup catcher. I do expect that he will be around as a backup for at least a few more seasons. Number 19, we have Chicago White Sox backup catcher Sebie Zavala. Now he's on the Seattle Mariners, and he's going to be their backup next year. Sebie Zavala, he's a weird guy, because in 2022, he hit 270. Last season, his batting average plummeted by 100 points. He hit 171, a 230 on base, 314 slugging. His redeeming quality, 7 home runs and 4 doubles. So he had a career high in home runs, but a career low in batting average. His defense was really, really solid. He plays really well defensively, and that's why the Mariners like him. That's why he was traded mid-season to the Diamondbacks. He was actually on the D-backs postseason roster as their backup catcher because Jose Herrera was hurt. So Sebie Zavala, number 19. He's not the greatest backup catcher, but he's fine for what he's there for. He's there to be a good defensive catcher and maybe have a little bit of pop in his bat, and that's what he did. Coming in at number 18, we have Jason DeLay of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Jason DeLay, 70 games, 167 at-bats, and what did he do in that time? He hits 18 runs batted in, 20 runs scored, only 1 home run, but 11 doubles. That's good for 347 slugging, 319 on base, 250 batting average, and a 666 OPS. So not great offensively, but it's a lot better than what we've seen from a lot of the guys below him who were having OPSs in the 5s, in the 4s. 666 OPS for a backup catcher is not even that bad. Jason DeLay, he might actually be their starter next season. It might be Andy Rodriguez. It might be Jason DeLay. It definitely is not going to be Austin Hedges. Jason DeLay actually was better than Austin Hedges as his backup catcher. So Jason DeLay, solid season out of another guy who, 28 years old, and he kind of just came out of nowhere. He was never on my radar. And at number 17, the Cincinnati Reds backup catcher Luke Miley, the 32-year-old journeyman guy. He's played for the Rays, the Blue Jays, the Brewers, the Guardians. Last year goes to the Reds and does pretty much what he's always done throughout his career. He's a very solid backup catcher. He's not going to blow you away offensively. He's also not going to blow you away defensively, but he's very consistently not bad. He's only really had one bad season in his career. Last season was not that season. 699 OPS, so he's almost to 700, 391 slugging, 308 on base, 235 batting average. He does get quite a few walks. That was helpful to his game. 25 runs batted in, 6 homers, 10 doubles, and 17 runs scored. And he does this in 78 games, 179 at-bats. So we're starting to see the volume of these guys improve. He did get a couple weeks when Tyler Stevenson was out with an injury that Luke Miley got to be their starter. And then, Tyler Stevenson came back and obviously got the job right back from him. But Luke Miley, solid season as a backup. He's definitely a guy who you can rely upon him as a backup. You probably don't want him as a starter, but as a backup, he's pretty consistently reliable. Number 16, I got the LA Angels backup catcher Chad Wallock. Chad Wallock, that was the most games he's ever played in his career. He spent a lot of time with the Marlins, but he never really got to play much. Last season, 65 games. That's his career high by 42. At-bats 157. He's never had more than 60. Scores 18 runs. That's a career high. 31 hits. That's a career high. 7 home runs. He's never hit more than 1 home run in a season. Last year, he hit 7. Batting average 197. On base 259. Slugging 376. And a 635 OPS. So very solid season out of Chad Wallock. The one thing you look at, though, 57 strikeouts in 157 at-bats. So he's striking out over 30% of the time. That's not great to see from Chad Wallock, but I will say his offense took a big step forward last year. Now the question is, for a guy who's really never been anything in his entire career, he spent 6 years in the league and done nothing. Can he repeat that? I don't know if the plan for the Angels is to keep him around. I believe Logan O'Hoppe is going to be their starter next season. O'Hoppe missed all the season, missed majority of last season to injury, so I'm not sure where Chad Wallock falls into their plans. But number 16 last year, solid season. And number 15, we have the Oakland A's backup catcher Carlos Perez. Carlos Perez did not do a whole lot last season. I'm looking at the wrong stats actually for Carlos Perez, but Carlos Perez of the Oakland A's, he ends up, let's see here. I was looking at the White Sox Carlos Perez, and I'm still looking at the White Sox Carlos Perez. I know there's another Carlos Perez who's on the A's. There he is. Yeah, 226 batting average, 6 home runs, 20 runs batted in, 650 OPS. Carlos Perez has a decent season last season, 65 games as the backup to Shea Langoliers. You know, he's not expected to be amazing, but he's expected to be solid. Shea Langoliers as a rookie, and he gets Carlos Perez as his backup, and Carlos Perez had a very solid season. And number 14, Seattle Mariners backup catcher Tom Murphy. I wanted to rank Tom Murphy higher than this, but I couldn't because the problem with Tom Murphy is he's just never healthy. You know, in 145 at-bats, he did more than a lot of catchers could do in 245 at-bats. 8 homers, 12 doubles, 17 runs batted in, 19 runs scored. He hit 290, 335 on-base percentage, 538 slugging. That's good for an 873 OPS. So he was really, really good offensively. However, he only played 145 games, so, you know, his reliability does get called into question there, and his consistency gets called into question there. But I will say this, Tom Murphy is a guy who I think could get a massive deal this offseason simply because the market is, that's where the market lands right now. Right now, you're looking at a market where guys who are not worth what they are getting way more than what they probably should be. I think Tom Murphy, despite the fact that he's never had more than 270 at-bats in a season, despite the fact that he's only played more than 80 games once in a season because of injuries and because he's been mostly a backup, he might get a really nice-looking contract when it's all said and done at the end of the year. And I'm not sure if I agree with it, but I'm just saying that's what he might be able to get, because some team is going to look at these offensive stats and say he had an 873 OPS in 47 games, 2022 894 OPS in 14 games. Some team's going to look at that and say, we could make him a starter. I don't know if he will be. He's also on the wrong side of 30, and he's not that good at defense, but that's Tom Murphy for you. Number 13, Rhys Maguire, backup catcher for the Boston Red Sox, 28 years old, guy who played for the Blue Jays for quite a while. The Blue Jays, maybe early on, they thought he could be a starter, but he very clearly was not ever going to be a starter. As a backup, though, he's very, very solid. 72 games, 187 at-bats, 12 doubles, 1 home run, only 1 home run, 16 runs batted in. But his batting average, 267 with a 310 on-base percentage and a 358 slugging. That's good for a 668 OPS, and he did it over a pretty substantial period of time. Plays the whole season. He was a very solid defensively backup as well. As a guy who the Red Sox, you know, Connor Wong was not that established as their starter, so they wanted a guy who could kind of push Connor Wong and be there to back him up whenever he needed support, and Rhys Maguire did that very, very well. I think number 13 is a really good spot for him. Coming in at number 12, we've got, who is this? This is Eric Haase of the Detroit Tigers. Yeah, Eric Haase of the Detroit Tigers. I'm not sure. It almost looks like he's wearing an Astros uniform. I don't know why that is. But Eric Haase, 86 games last season, 264 at-bats, 53 hits, 75 total bases with 8 doubles, 4 homers, 26 runs batted in, and what are we looking at here? Oh, he got traded. He got traded midseason to the Guardians. That's why. Okay, I'm confused. Confusing myself. Okay, yeah, but he's been with the Tigers for most of his career. He actually played with the Guardians before that. But Eric Hassey, he actually has a very good season, and he's always kind of been a journeyman guy. Never really got his chance to grow, but yeah, the one downside, his batting average not great, 201 batting average. So Eric Hassey does have to work on that. But considering he played 264 at bats, that's the most out of any catcher we've seen so far. He was very solid, backing up Jake Rogers, and he's another guy who probably is going to get a chance to be a backup again next season. And coming in at number 11, just missing out on the top 10, Baltimore Orioles backup catcher James McCann. This is exactly what you want to see out of a guy like McCann, a veteran guy who he's been a starter in years past. He was a starter for quite some time with the Tigers, got a really, really big contract to play for the Mets, and that contract pretty much ended up being a terrible signing for the Mets because after just one season, he had been benched, and he really struggled with the Mets. And he goes back to being a backup after, really he broke out with the Tigers 2018, 2017, and with the White Sox in 2019. With the Mets, he was so bad, so he goes to the Orioles. He's going to be their backup. He's going to back up Adley Rutschman. We'll just see what he can do, and he was a very, very good backup for Adley Rutschman to have. 207 at-bats, 70 games, so he didn't play that much, but he was able to play whenever they needed him to. 14 doubles, 6 homers, 26 runs batted in, 25 runs scored. He hit 222, 269 on base, 377 slugging, and he did it over an extended period of time, which makes me think this is sustainable. I think James McCann, this is what you're going to see from him going forward. I think he has probably 3 or 4 more years as a really, really consistent, reliable backup catcher, and that's exactly what you expect. When you take a starting catcher, turn him into a backup, you would hope he could be one of the more productive backup catchers. So we kick off the top 10 with number 10, Freddy Ferman of the Kansas City Royals, 28 years old in his second season. And Freddy Ferman is a guy who really, I had no idea existed until last year. He played 3 games, 2022, but in 2023, 70 games, 217 at-bats, so he got some volume, 10 doubles, 9 home runs. That's the most we've seen out of any backup catcher so far. 32 runs batted in, 26 runs scored. He gets 281 batting average, 321 on base, 461 slugging, and a 782 OPS. So Freddy Ferman, in a pretty significant sample size, had a really, really good season last year. I almost wonder if the Royals' plan is for him to be their starting catcher next season and move Salvador Perez over to a DH role, because Perez defensively is not as good as Freddy Ferman, and Freddy Ferman right now, last year, he proved that he can hit. So I'm not sure what their plan is going forward with him, but he might be a starter going forward. And coming in at number 9, we have Jacob Stallings of the Miami Marlins. Jacob Stallings, former starter, longtime starter for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He goes to Miami and got hurt last year. Nick Forte ends up being their starter, but Jacob Stallings as a backup, he was not very good, honestly. A 191 batting average, 278 on base, 286 slugging, and a 564 OPS. The reason why he is so high up here is because he did get quite a bit of volume, 241 at-bats, 46 base hits, 14 doubles, only 3 home runs, 20 runs batted in, 22 runs scored. So Jacob Stallings is a guy who, he might not be that good at the slash line. The slash line doesn't look great, but he did get quite a bit of volume. He was given a chance to play quite a bit because early in the season he was their starter, ends up losing out in a lot of playing time later on in the season, but I think Jacob Stallings will be all right. He's definitely going to be back with Miami next season, and he's a guy who, for what he's done throughout his career, this is who he is right now. He's a solid up-tier, high-end backup, low-end starting catcher. Coming in at number 8, the Brewers catcher, Victor Caratini. So Victor Caratini, he has been a starter before for the Padres, goes over to the Brewers. He was a starter in 2022. 2023, they bring in William Contreras, who was one of the best catchers in all of baseball last season. So Caratini now is a backup, and he did pretty well as a backup. Hit 260, 327 on base, 383 slugging, and a 710 OPS. That's pretty good numbers for a slash line. 201 at-bats, 4 doubles, 7 homers, 25 runs batted in, 23 runs scored, and he's really solid defensively behind the plate. Victor Caratini knows what he is doing. So he's now with the Houston Astros. He's going to get a chance to probably be their backup with the Astros next year. And I think, again, he's one of the best backup catchers in the league. He's consistent, never really has had a bad season offensively. Victor Caratini is a good player, and he's still young enough, and he's only 30, so he has probably like 4 or 5 more years left in him. Coming in at Number 7, we've got Andrew Kisner of the St. Louis Cardinals. Andrew Kisner, the guy who at one point in the season, they were going to make him the starter and move Wilson Contreras to DH. That's how much they liked Andrew Kisner. And he did have a career year last year. Only 70 games, but in those 70 games, 11 doubles, 10 home runs. He 31 runs batted in, 30 runs scored, a 241 batting average, 424 was his slugging percentage, and that combines for a career high 712 OPS. Before that, his career high was 670 in 2019, so he really broke open his career high OPS. He had a good season. He's also good defensively. He's much better defensively than Wilson Contreras was. Andrew Kisner is going to be around for a while. He's been with the Cardinals his whole career. I'm not sure how much longer he'll stay with the Cardinals, but I think he is going to be a backup catcher for quite some time because he does what you want from a backup catcher. He plays really good defense. He's able to play whenever you need him to, and he is reliably not bad offensively. He's not going to be good offensively, but he's not going to be bad either. Coming in at number 6, we have Travis d'Arnaud, the backup catcher for the Atlanta Braves. Former all-star guy. He's played with the Mets and the Braves in his entire career, and he is one of the most reliably solid backup catchers that exists in all of baseball. He is so good at what he does, at what he is there for, because he actually is one of the few backup catchers that is consistently providing on offense. Last season, same thing. 225 batting average, 288 on base, 397 slugging, 11 homers, 13 doubles, 39 runs batted in, 31 runs scored, and in 74 games, 267 at-bats. What's crazy is that d'Arnaud doesn't even play catcher every game. They give him playing time at DH as well. That's how good he is. That's how valuable he is that they allow this guy to play some DH because Sean Murphy as a catcher, you're not benching Sean Murphy no matter how good Travis d'Arnaud is doing, but he is good enough that they even give him at-bats at DH. Travis d'Arnaud, really good player. He's going to be a backup for much longer in his career. He's 34. He's still going strong, and he's been one of the best backup catchers for quite some time now. Coming in at number 5, the new guy, Blake Sable of the San Francisco Giants. Blake Sable, as a rookie last season, 110 games, 310 at-bats. He was essentially in a platoon with Patrick Bailey. Bailey ended up being their starter. Sable as their backup, though, very, very solid production. 235 average, 301 on base, 394 slugging, almost cracks that 700 mark for his OPS. 44 runs batted in, 13 homers, 10 doubles, 73 hits, 36 runs scored, and 4 stolen bases. So he got a little bit of speed. He's got some pop in his bat, plays good defense. This is a good player, and as a rookie, I expect him to get a lot better. He's 25 years old. He might have a career as a starter someday in this league. And at number 4, we've got the Blue Jays backup catcher, Danny Jansen. Danny Jansen, obviously, he was supposed to be their starter. Before Alejandro Kirk arrived a couple of years ago, Danny Jansen was their starter. But, last season, he's been a backup for the past couple of seasons. And last season, he was very good. He was a very solid player last season. He actually took away a lot of at-bats from Alejandro Kirk. 268 at-bats, 17 home runs. That's the most out of any backup catcher we've seen so far. I believe he has the second most home runs out of any backup catcher this season. 15 doubles as well, so it's not just the home runs. He's got serious power. 17, by the way, career high home runs. 53 runs batted in. That was a career high. 38 runs scored. That was a career high. A 228 batting average, 312 on base, 474 slugging, and he ends up with an OPS of 786. So that's a really solid slash line, and he did it with volume. He did it with almost 300 at-bats. He did it playing in more than half the Blue Jays games last season. Danny Jansen, really good season out of a guy who, some people had considered him a bust, but I think with catchers, you have to consider what really makes him a bust, because he's good defensively and he's improving offensively. He's improved the past 3 seasons offensively. So Danny Jansen, maybe he's not a bust. Maybe he was just never going to be a starter, but as a backup, he's really, really good. We're into the top 3, and getting the top 3 started off, it's Minnesota Twins, Ryan Jeffers. Ryan Jeffers, last season, he was so good. He actually ended up being their starter in the second half of the season because they traded away Christian Vasquez. Ryan Jeffers took over as the starter in the second half and was really, really good. 276 batting average, 369 on base. That's the highest we've seen out of anyone in this video. 490 slugging, and it's good for an 859 OPS. And again, 859 OPS with significant volume. That makes me think this is sustainable. 14 homers, 15 doubles, 2 triples. That's not something you see out of a catcher. Stole 3 bases. He goes for 46 runs, 43 runs batted in, 79 hits, and he goes for 96 games, 286 at-bats. So he played quite a bit, and he played very well while he was playing. Ryan Jeffers is going to be a starter next season. He's going to get a chance to be their everyday guy, and I think he could really ascend into the probably being a top 15 catcher in baseball. And coming in at number 2, the Houston Astros rookie backup catcher, Yandy Diaz, 25 years old, and he broke out last season. 23 home runs, most of any backup catcher, 22 doubles. He scores 51 times, 60 runs batted in, a 282 batting average, 308 on base, 538 slugging, 846 OPS. He played mostly at catcher. He also played about 40 games though at DH, 104 games. So he had a lot of volume, 355 at bats, a lot of volume, and really good production while he was playing. I think this is completely sustainable. He's gonna be their starter next season. They have Caratini now as his backup. He's gonna be really good for a long time to come. I think he could be a top 10 catcher next season. And finally, the best backup catcher in all of baseball last season, Mitch Garver. 2023, Mitch Garver was the best backup catcher in baseball, backing up Jonah Heim with the Texas Rangers. Garver was supposed to be their starter, but injuries have troubled him over the past kind of his entire career, really. Injuries have been a really big struggle for Mitch Garver, but when he's healthy, he's really good. 19 homers, 11 doubles. He's got a lot of pop in that bat, 45 runs, 50 runs batted in, 296 at-bats, so he's still got quite a bit of volume. Played some DH as well, 270 batting average, 370 on base, 500 slugging, and is good for a career high, no, not a career high, an 870 OPS, which is his third highest in his career. Mitch Garver had a really good season last year. Anytime he's playing, he's a feared hitter. He's got a lot of pop, he hits for average, plays good defense, not amazing defense, but solid defense. Right now he's a free agent, so some team's going to sign him, probably either to be their starting catcher or to be their starting DH, because the power in that bat is undeniable. He's a really good player, and he proved it last season. Best backup catcher in the league, Mitch Garver, World Series champion, Mitch Garver. And that is going to do it on this video. If you guys liked what you see, if you guys agree, if you disagree, comment down below. Next up, tomorrow is going to be the first base rankings. The starting first baseman will go 1 through 30. So if you want to see that video, stay tuned, hit the notification. We've also already done our starting catcher rankings. So if you want to see those, you can click the link in the description to watch the starting catcher rankings and see all of your favorite catchers who weren't in this video because they were starters. So without further ado, thank you all for watching so much. This is Coast to Coast Sports, and we will see you all in the next one.